When Zoran Mamdani won New York City's mayoral election on November 4th, 2025, he didn't just make history as America's youngest big city mayor in over a century. He became the highest-profile example of a phenomenon that demographers and economists are just beginning to document. Ugandan Americans are building wealth in the United States at rates that exceed both general American population and many other immigrant groups. The data reveals a striking pattern. Ugandan immigrants earn median family incomes of $106,188 compared to $92,096 for average American families, 15.3% higher despite being relatively recent arrivals. They achieve bachelor's degree attainment rates of 40.8% versus 31.9% for Americans overall, 28% higher educational achievement that translates directly into professional careers and wealth accumulation. This isn't accident or lucky coincidence. From Oscar-nominated filmmaker Mira Nair's $5 million fortune to thousands of Ugandan nurses, doctors, and professionals quietly building 6- and 7-figure net worths across Massachusetts, California, Maryland, and Georgia, Ugandan Americans have cracked the code of immigrant wealth creation through specific, replicable strategies. They leverage British-influenced education systems that credential transfer seamlessly to American professional licensing. They concentrate in high-income sectors like healthcare, academia, and technology, where wages far exceed American medians. They maintain saving and investment rates that compound modest professional incomes into substantial wealth over decades. And they build community networks that circulate capital, opportunities, and knowledge rather than extracting it to outside economies. But what makes Ugandan Americans succeed at wealth building when so many other immigrant groups struggle? Which factors enable them to out-earn average Americans despite arriving with limited resources? And what can their success teach about immigrant wealth creation more broadly? Today, we're revealing the 7 factors that make Ugandan Americans one of America's most successful wealth-building immigrant communities. Stick around, because the #1 factor explains why families like the Mamdanis, now governing New York City, represent pattern rather than exception. Number 7. The British education legacy. Credential transferability. Ugandan American wealth creation begins with education. Specifically, the British colonial legacy that created Ugandan education system closely aligned with Western standards, making credentials earned at Makerere University or other Ugandan institutions transfer smoothly to American professional licensing and academic recognition. This credential transferability provides enormous advantage that immigrants from countries with non-Western education systems lack. The statistics are striking. According to demographic data analysis, 40.8% of Ugandan Americans hold at least bachelor's degrees compared to 31.9% of Americans overall, a difference of 28% representing substantially higher educational achievement. This isn't selection bias of highly educated immigrants self-selecting to emigrate. It's pattern where Uganda's British-modeled education system produces graduates whose credentials American institutions recognize and value immediately. But it all started when British colonial administrators established Makerere University in 1922 as technical school, later elevating it to university status, providing British-style higher education to East African students. The curriculum, examination systems, and degree structures mirrored British universities, meaning Makerere graduates could pursue further education at Oxford, Cambridge, or American universities without credential translation challenges that plague graduates from universities using different systems. The credential advantage manifests practically when Ugandan nurses trained at Mulago Hospital or other Ugandan medical schools apply for American nursing licenses. Their training, conducted in English using British medical education models, aligns closely with American NCLEX licensure requirements. Compare this to nurses trained in countries using different languages or medical education approaches. They face years of credential evaluation, additional coursework, and examinations before practicing. Ugandan nurses transition much faster, entering high-paying American healthcare jobs within months rather than years. The Mamdani family perfectly illustrates this advantage. Mahmoud Mamdani, educated at Makerere University, then University of Pittsburgh, transitioned seamlessly from Ugandan to American academia because his Makerere credentials earned immediate respect from American universities. Mira Nair studied at Delhi University, then Harvard, Her international education was valued rather than dismissed. This credential recognition enabled both to enter elite American institutions, Columbia, Harvard Film Program, that launched careers generating millions. What makes British education legacy the number 7 factor is recognizing how invisible yet powerful it is. Ugandan immigrants don't think my British model education gives me credential advantage, but that advantage shapes every professional opportunity they access. Its foundation enabling everything else on this list. And while education credentials open doors, the next factor explains how Ugandan Americans choose which doors to enter. Number 6. Strategic sector selection, healthcare, academia, and high-wage industries. Ugandan Americans don't just have education credentials, they strategically deploy them into America's highest-paying sectors where wages far exceed national medians. Healthcare dominates Ugandan American employment, with thousands working as registered nurses earning $75,000 to $110,000 annually, physicians earning $200,000 to $600,000, and healthcare administrators making $101,000 to $250,000. These aren't struggling immigrant jobs. These are solid, upper-middle-class professional positions. The income data confirms this pattern. Ugandan immigrants earn median family incomes of $106,188 compared to $92,096 for average American families, 15.3% higher, despite being recent arrivals without generational wealth advantages. This income premium comes directly from sector selection, choosing high-wage professions rather than accepting whatever employment is available. But it all started when Ugandan healthcare workers recognized that America desperately needs nurses and doctors, while Uganda's healthcare system offered limited opportunities and low pay. The wage differential is enormous. Nurses in Uganda might earn $500 to $1,000 monthly, while American nurses earn $7,500 to $9,000 monthly. This 10-to-1 wage differential makes immigration economically rational, even accounting for higher American living costs. The healthcare pipeline is well established. Ugandan nurses complete training at institutions like Mulago Hospital School of Nursing in Kampala, pass English language NCLEX exam, secure employment at American hospitals recruiting internationally, then immigrate on work visas. Once established, they sponsor family members who repeat the process, creating chain migration that concentrates Ugandan Americans in healthcare. According to research, many Ugandan nurses learned about American opportunities from friends and colleagues who already emigrated, creating information networks that perpetuate sector concentration. The academic sector represents second major concentration. Professors like Mahmoud Mamdani, earning $200,000 to $300,000 annually at Columbia University, represent pattern where Ugandan academics leverage British model PhDs into American university positions. Other Ugandan Americans work as researchers, administrators, and professionals at universities, think tanks, and research institutions paying well above median wages. The geographic concentration follows sector patterns. Massachusetts has the largest Ugandan American population, 5,300 people, 16% of U.S. total, concentrated in Boston area, where hospital systems and universities create enormous healthcare and academic employment. Los Angeles County, 2,000 people, and Montgomery County, Maryland, 1,100, similarly feature major medical centers and institutions employing Ugandan professionals. What makes sector selection crucial for Ugandan American wealth building is recognizing how it compounds education advantages. British model credentials matter most in sectors requiring professional licensing, healthcare, academia, engineering. Ugandan Americans concentrate exactly where their credential advantages maximize income, creating a virtuous cycle where high earnings enable wealth accumulation impossible in lower-wage industries. From strategic sector selection to community network effects, our next factor shows how Ugandan Americans help each other succeed. Number 5. The Diaspora Network Effect, Information and Opportunity Circulation. Ugandan American wealth building doesn't happen in isolation. It happens through dense community networks that circulate information about opportunities, jobs, housing, and wealth building strategies. Despite being relatively small immigrant population, 32,900 people nationwide, according to Migration Policy Institute, estimates for 2017 to 2021. Ugandan Americans maintain tight networks that punch above their demographic weight. The concentration patterns reveal network effects clearly. Middlesex County, Massachusetts, contains 4,100 Ugandan Americans, over 12% of the entire U.S. Ugandan population in single county. Los Angeles County has 2,000. DeKalb County, Georgia, has 1,400. This clustering isn't accidental. It reflects chain migration where successful immigrants sponsor relatives and share information about opportunities with friends from Uganda. But it all started when early Ugandan immigrants, many arriving in 1980s and 90s fleeing Idi Amin's aftermath and subsequent instability, established footholds in cities like Boston, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. They found jobs, secured housing, learned systems, then shared that knowledge with subsequent arrivals. This information sharing is documented in research, showing that most Ugandan nurses who immigrated learned about opportunities from friends and colleagues who had already emigrated, because information on international migration isn't readily accessible in Uganda itself. The network effects create multiple wealth advantages. First, job information circulates through community before reaching public markets. When hospital needs Ugandan nurse, existing Ugandan staff members recommend qualified friends from Uganda, creating employment pipeline outside standard recruiting. Second, housing knowledge spreads. Ugandan families learn which neighborhoods are safe, affordable, and have good schools through community rather than expensive mistakes. Third, financial literacy circulates. Successful Ugandan Americans share investment strategies, tax optimization, and wealth-building approaches with newer arrivals. The Mamdani family leveraged networks extensively. Mahmoud's academic career benefited from connections to other African scholars and Columbia's African Studies community. Mira's filmmaking career involved collaboration with other South Asian and African artists, creating films serving diaspora audiences. Zoran's political organizing through Democratic Socialists of America represented network organizing, building connections that multiplied individual efforts into collective power. The religious and cultural organizations strengthened networks. Ugandan churches in Boston, Los Angeles, and other cities function as community centers where families meet, share information, and provide mutual aid. Professional associations connect Ugandan doctors, nurses, and academics. These networks create social capital that working-class Americans and isolated immigrants lack, relationships providing opportunities, support, and knowledge that wealth requires. What makes network effects particularly powerful for small immigrant communities is how information density compensates for demographic size. 33,000 Ugandan Americans can't match Nigerian American population, 400,000 plus, or Ethiopian American numbers, but concentrated networks mean high percentage of Ugandan Americans benefit from community knowledge and support that larger but more dispersed groups cannot replicate. Before we continue to the top 4 factors, let me ask you something. Are you starting to understand why Ugandan Americans build wealth despite being small immigrant community? If this analysis is revealing patterns mainstream coverage ignores, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's reveal the top 4 factors that explain Ugandan American economic success. Number 4. Dual-income professional households. Compounding upper-middle-class salaries. Ugandan American wealth building accelerates dramatically through dual-income professional households where both partners work in high-wage sectors. When both spouses earn nursing salaries of $75,000 to $110,000, combined household income reaches $150,000 to $220,000, placing family firmly in American upper-middle class despite being first-generation immigrants. The wealth accumulation from dual high incomes is substantial. A Ugandan household earning $150,000 annually, saving 25%, high but achievable with discipline, accumulates $37,500 yearly. Over 30 years, this generates $1.125 million before accounting for investment returns. Add employer retirement contributions, home equity appreciation, and conservative investment returns, and millionaire status by retirement becomes almost inevitable. But it all started when Ugandan immigrants, unlike many immigrant groups, arrive with spouses who also hold professional credentials. Both husband and wife completed university in Uganda. Both can secure American professional licenses. Both can work in high-wage sectors. This differs dramatically from immigrant patterns, where one spouse sacrifices career to support others' employment, or where one spouse's credentials don't transfer to American markets. The healthcare sector enables this pattern perfectly. Ugandan nurse couples both securing employment at hospitals, earning combined $160,000 to $200,000, create household income exceeding vast majority of American families. These couples buy homes in suburbs near hospitals, save aggressively, invest in retirement accounts and real estate, and within 20 to 30 years have accumulated net worths of $1 to $3 million through nothing more exotic than disciplined professional employment. The Mamdani family exemplifies this pattern at elite level. Mahmoud earning $200,000 to $300,000 at Columbia, combined with Mira's filmmaker income, variable but averaging hundreds of thousands in productive years, created household income during peak earning years, likely exceeding $400,000 to $500,000 annually. This elite professional household income enabled Manhattan real estate purchases, Uganda property maintenance, and wealth accumulation reaching conservatively $5 to $10 million. The second-generation wealth multiplies dramatically. Children raised in households earning $150,000 to $200,000 attend good schools, complete college without crushing debt, parents can help pay, enter professional careers earlier without student loan burdens, and inherit estates of $1 to $3 million when parents pass. This generational wealth transfer elevates second-generation Ugandan Americans into ranks of Americans with inherited wealth, crossing threshold from earned comfort to generational prosperity. What makes dual-income professional households the number 4 factor is recognizing how it multiplies every other advantage. Education credentials matter more when both spouses have them. Sector selection pays more when both partners choose high-wage industries. Networks provide more opportunities when both spouses participate. This compounding effect explains why Ugandan American households out-earn average American families despite arriving with nothing but education and determination. From dual incomes to property ownership, our next factor shows how Ugandan Americans convert high earnings into permanent wealth through real estate. Number 3. Strategic real estate investment. Building wealth through property. Ugandan Americans don't just earn high incomes, they convert those incomes into wealth through strategic real estate investment. Unlike immigrant groups that spend entire incomes on consumption or send all savings as remittances, Ugandan Americans buy primary residences quickly, then expand into rental properties that generate passive income and appreciation wealth, surpassing what savings accounts or even stock investments typically provide. The home ownership pattern begins early. Ugandan American families, often with dual professional incomes and strong credit from stable employment, buy homes within 5 to 10 years of arrival rather than renting indefinitely. These aren't modest starter homes. Professional couples earning $150,000 can afford homes worth $300,000 to $500,000 in cities like Boston suburbs, Atlanta, or Maryland. This homeownership creates equity that compounds over decades. But it all started when Ugandan immigrants recognized that American real estate, despite higher prices than Uganda, offers combination of appreciation, leverage, and tax advantages unavailable in Uganda's less developed real estate markets. Buying home with 20% down payment means controlling $300,000 asset with just $60,000 cash, then benefiting from full appreciation as property values rise. This leverage amplifies wealth building in ways that renting or saving cash cannot match. The investment property expansion follows predictable pattern. After establishing equity in primary residence through 5 to 10 years of mortgage payments and appreciation, Ugandan American families purchase rental properties. Initially modest properties requiring 25% down, higher than primary residence but still manageable with equity, access. Then, additional properties as equity and income grow. Common strategy involves buying properties in emerging neighborhoods or secondary markets where prices are lower, but appreciation potential is strong, then holding long-term as rental income covers mortgages and property values rise. The Mamdani family's real estate holdings demonstrate this strategy at scale. Mira's Manhattan loft, purchased for $1.375 million in 2008, sold for $1.45 million in 2019, now valued at $1.9 million, plus reported $2 million Chelsea condo plus Uganda properties create real estate portfolio, likely worth $3 to $4 million. This represents perhaps 30 to 40% of families' $5 to $10 million net worth, showing how property ownership creates substantial wealth beyond professional income. The wealth compounding through real estate is powerful. Home purchased for $300,000, appreciating at 5% annually, reaches $775,000 in 20 years. 4. $175,000 in appreciation wealth requiring no additional investment beyond initial down payment and mortgage payments. Rental properties add income dimension. Property generating $15,000 annually in net rental income after expenses creates $300,000 in income over 20 years plus appreciation wealth on property itself. What makes real estate the number 3 factor is how it creates permanent, transferable wealth that outlasts careers. Professional incomes end at retirement. Real estate appreciates regardless of owner's employment, generates income through retirement, transfers to children as inheritance, and provides financial security that salaries alone cannot create. Ugandan Americans who combine high professional incomes with strategic real estate investment build wealth reaching millions within single generation. From property wealth to cultural values, our final 2 factors reveal why Ugandan American wealth building reaches levels exceeding many longer established American families. Number 2. High savings rates and investment discipline. Cultural financial practices. Ugandan Americans don't just earn high incomes and buy real estate. They save and invest at rates that shock Americans accustomed to consumption-driven lifestyles. Cultural values emphasizing delayed gratification, investment over immediate consumption, and building security for families create savings behaviors that compound high professional incomes into substantial wealth far faster than Americans earning similar salaries who save minimally. The savings rate difference is dramatic. While average American saves around 3% of income, Ugandan immigrant families commonly save 20 to 30%, 10 times higher savings rate. For family earning $150,000, 30% savings means $45,000 annually invested rather than spent. Over 30 years, that's $1.35 million before investment returns. With conservative 7% annual returns, that savings grows to over $4 million, wealth created purely through disciplined savings from professional income. But it all started with cultural values shaped by Uganda's economic volatility and limited social safety nets. Ugandans who grew up without pension systems, reliable banking, or government support learned that personal savings and family support were only reliable financial security. This created cultural norm where saving substantial portion of income wasn't sacrifice. It was common sense preparation for inevitable hardships. That cultural value transplanted to America becomes enormous wealth-building advantage when combined with American professional incomes. The investment discipline extends beyond just saving to strategic wealth building. Ugandan Americans max out retirement accounts, 401k, IRA, capturing employer matches and tax advantages. They invest in index funds and real estate rather than keeping savings in low-interest accounts. They avoid consumer debt beyond mortgages. No credit card balances. Auto loans kept minimal. Student loans paid aggressively. This financial discipline means their high incomes translate into wealth accumulation rather than lifestyle inflation that leaves Americans earning $200,000 living paycheck to paycheck. The Mamdani family's wealth accumulation reflects these values even at elite income levels. Despite earning potentially $400,000 to $500,000 annually during peak years, they maintained relatively modest lifestyle. Columbia housing rather than buying palatial Manhattan apartment. Zorin attending public school rather than elite private schools. No ostentatious displays of wealth. This discipline enabled wealth accumulation to $5 to $10 million, rather than spending every dollar on luxury consumption as many American elites do. The community reinforcement strengthens discipline. When Ugandan families socialize with other Ugandan families who save aggressively and invest strategically, those behaviors become normalized rather than exceptional. Community discussions focus on real estate investments, retirement planning, and wealth building rather than just consumption, creating peer pressure toward financial responsibility rather than conspicuous spending. What makes high savings rates and investment discipline the number 2 factor is recognizing how it multiplies every other advantage exponentially. High professional income means nothing if spent entirely on consumption. Real estate creates wealth only if down payments can be saved. Dual income households build wealth only if both incomes aren't absorbed by lifestyle inflation. Ugandan American savings discipline is the multiplier that converts income advantages into actual wealth accumulation. And finally, at number 1, we reach the factor that enables everything else: the cultural and psychological mindset that frames American immigration as opportunity requiring sacrifice, hard work, and strategic planning rather than entitlement or guaranteed success. Number 1. The immigrant opportunity mindset: strategic ambition and sacrifice. At number 1 sits the psychological and cultural factor that makes everything else possible. Ugandan Americans approach American immigration with mindset combining realistic assessment of opportunity, willingness to sacrifice present comfort for future security, and strategic ambition that focuses on long-term wealth building rather than short-term consumption. This mindset isn't unique to Ugandan immigrants, but it's pervasive enough within community to create measurable economic outcomes distinguishing them from both native-born Americans and many other immigrant groups. The opportunity belief is crucial. Ugandan immigrants don't arrive expecting easy success or believing America owes them anything. They arrive believing America offers opportunities unavailable in Uganda, but requiring hard work, education, and sacrifice to access. This realistic optimism creates work ethic where Ugandan nurses work double shifts, professionals pursue additional certifications advancing careers, and families make financial sacrifices today, expecting payoffs years or decades later. But it all started when Ugandan immigrants, many arriving from countries with per capita GDP under $1,000, recognized that even modest professional jobs in America pay multiples of what doctors or professors earn in Uganda. This wage differential creates powerful motivation. Working 60-hour weeks as nurse in Boston pays more than 40-hour weeks as doctor in Kampala. That calculation makes sacrifice feel temporary and worthwhile rather than permanent hardship. The strategic planning manifests practically. Ugandan families arrive with clear plans: complete credential recognition within 6 months, secure professional employment within 1 year, buy home within 5 years, purchase rental property within 10 years, achieve financial independence by retirement. This goal-oriented approach contrasts with Americans who drift through careers without explicit wealth plans, and immigrants from some cultures who prioritize different values over wealth accumulation. The Mamdani family story, while elite, illustrates strategic ambition perfectly. Mahmoud and Mira didn't just pursue careers, they pursued elite careers requiring enormous sacrifice. Mira built filmmaking career through years of lower-budget work before major success. Mahmoud earned Columbia position through decades of academic achievement. Zoran worked as housing counselor and failed rapper before entering politics. At every generation, family members pursued ambitious goals, requiring sacrifice of easier paths, betting on long-term success over short-term comfort. The generational thinking is perhaps most distinctive feature. Ugandan American families sacrifice not just for their own comfort, but explicitly to provide advantages for children. Parents work multiple jobs to afford homes in better school districts. They skip vacations to save for children's college expenses. They invest in real estate not for immediate income but for inheritance children will receive. This generational perspective means wealth builds across decades rather than being consumed within single generation. The work ethic during wealth-building phase is intense. It's common for Ugandan American nurses to work day shifts at hospitals, then pick up agency nursing shifts at night, effectively working 50 to 70 hours weekly during prime earning years. This isn't sustainable forever, but sustained for 10 to 15 years, it dramatically accelerates wealth accumulation. Nurse earning $90,000 from base job plus $40,000 from agency shifts reaches $130,000 total income. Saving and investing the extra $40,000 creates substantial wealth quickly. What makes immigrant opportunity mindset the #1 factor is recognizing its prerequisite for everything else. Education credentials mean nothing without ambition to use them. High-wage sectors aren't accessible without sacrifice to complete training. Real estate wealth requires discipline to save down payments rather than spending on consumption. Savings rates of 30% require accepting lifestyle temporarily below what income could support. Every other factor on this list depends on mindset that frames American opportunity as requiring sacrifice and strategic planning rather than arriving automatically. The Ugandan American experience isn't claiming they work harder than all Americans, or that wealth building is just mindset. Structural advantages like British education credentials and healthcare sector opportunities matter enormously. But among immigrant groups with similar structural advantages, Ugandan Americans distinguish themselves through how consistently they combine opportunity recognition with disciplined execution, creating wealth outcomes that exceed expectations given their recent arrival and relatively small population size. From British education credentials transferring seamlessly to American professional licensing to strategic concentration in high-wage healthcare and academic sectors. From dense diaspora networks circulating opportunities to dual-income professional households compounding upper-middle-class salaries. From strategic real estate investment creating permanent wealth to extraordinary savings rates of 20 to 30%. And finally, to immigrant opportunity mindset combining ambition with sacrifice. Ugandan Americans have cracked the code of immigrant wealth building in America, creating median family incomes 15.3% higher than native-born Americans despite arriving with limited resources. The Mamdani family, from Mahmoud's Columbia professorship to Mira's $5 million filmmaking fortune to Zoran's historic mayoral victory, represents the pattern rather than exception. Their success illustrates what happens when British credential education meets American professional opportunities, when dual elite incomes combine with disciplined wealth building, when immigrant sacrifice and strategic ambition focus on generational prosperity rather than immediate consumption. They're not self-made from poverty. They arrived with education advantages. But they converted those advantages into wealth far exceeding what similarly educated Americans typically accumulate. The question Ugandan American success raises isn't whether they're somehow superior to other immigrants or Americans. It's what structural factors and cultural values combine to create measurable economic outcomes distinguishing small immigrant groups. The answer reveals that wealth building in America still works for those who combine education credentials, strategic sector selection, community support, financial discipline, and willingness to sacrifice present comfort for future security. Ugandan Americans prove that American opportunity isn't myth, but neither is it automatic or easy. It requires everything on this list working together across decades of disciplined execution. Which factor do you think matters most for Ugandan American wealth building? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more analysis of how immigrant communities build wealth in America.